Hi there. I have recently had quite a few people write to me wanting me to share some of the magical or mystical or psychic experiences that I've had. There seems to be a lot of interest in that part of the experience of Kelly, and I'm happy to share these stories. I simply want to say this as kind of a caveat to sharing. To me, these are stories. Yes, they appear to be happening in this experience, and they're fun and they're amazing, and I'm very blessed and happy to have them happen. But I also am aware that they're just like everything else here. They're just an experience, and so I share with that kind of caveat because I certainly don't want people to think that, as I've said many times, that's the most important part of this experience. It's just one of the many things. Like a loaf of bread has so many ingredients, and this to me is just one. So I'll share a couple fun little stories for those of you who have asked, and yeah, just have no attachment to the outcome. So I think one of the really kind of scariest things that's happened to me in this experience was working with a client. We've had this happen a couple times, working with a client who in the middle of the session their face literally shifted. I had one that the face literally looked so scary. And for me, the recognition happens that there is nothing to be fearful of. There is nothing to be afraid of. All of this is just part of the illusion. And in that experience, I did not react. I simply just continued on the path that I was on without any direction towards it or fear of it. The faces morph into different things. One of them was just kind of zombie-like, and the person that was sitting across from me was unaware that this was even happening. I had another client who came in. Often people come to me and they have this, I'm not going to tell her anything and I'm going to make her do all the work, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But as an empath and clairsentient, often I'll take on the experience of what is happening or they're wanting me to see. And in this one particular case, I had a client come in and they had a loss in their family from someone who had been horribly decapitated on a snowmobile accident. They were wanting me to just share what was coming through, and this was early on when I first really started understanding this new set of tools and things that seemed to be happening in this experience of Kelly, and really didn't know how to drive the vehicle very well. And to me, this is like a car, and so there's all these new buttons and gadgets to learn how to use, and I hadn't really successfully done it yet. Anyway, as this client sitting in front of me, not wanting to share much, hoping to validate what they're wanting to hear, I go deeply into the session, and immediately I became that person in the snowmobile accident, and I literally went through the experience of the quote-unquote death. I felt the impact, and I instantly got very, very sick to my stomach and had to leave the room. I had to excuse myself to be sick. That's how sick it made me. So I learned very quickly not to just go diving straight into these things, to be cautious about what the areas I'm moving around in, and kind of be cognizant of what could come forward. Certainly that did validate for them that they were communicating with the person they were hoping to, but in the experience of Kelly, that was not so much fun. Let's see, what other ones can I share? Had an experience of waking up about 3 in the morning, feeling like I had just had a dream. And I sat up in bed and thinking that I had just had a dream and I was awake. And I'm sitting up in bed, and the next thing I realize is my bedroom is not my bedroom. I'm in someone's house. So I begin to try and understand what's going on. And I don't know if any of you have had the experience of thinking you're in a dream, dreaming. That's what I thought was happening now. So I thought, okay, so I'm dreaming and I'm in this dream dreaming that I'm dreaming. Anyway, I'm walking through this house, don't recognize the house, not familiar to me, and I kind of move around and realize that there's a couple in the kitchen of the house and they're fighting and they don't see me there. And why I'm there, I don't know. And I could tell that they had been drinking and they were having an argument, and it was getting very heated. And the woman wanted to fight really bad, and the man didn't want to fight. He wanted to walk away. So he lost his temper and he began to walk away. And as he did, the woman, attempting to get his attention very strongly, grabbed a knife out of the knife block on the counter. And I knew as this was playing out in front of me that she had no intention of using this. There was just this kind of threat thing happening. And she kind of called him back and showed him that she had this knife, and she meant business. She wanted him to turn around and fight with her. And, this happens when drugs and alcohol are involved. People just don't really use their minds too clearly. And he turned around and in an attempt to take the knife out of her hand, well, really, it wasn't an attempt to take the knife out of her hand. It was an attempt to overpower her. He stabbed her. And I felt that, and I was witnessing it at the same time. And I was in this room. I mean, it was as clear as if I was standing in front of you having a conversation. And the next thing I knew, I was outside of the house on the street, seeing the front of the house and the street number. So immediately after that, I really am waking up in bed, and I sit up, this time for real, not a dream in a dream, just covered in sweat from how scary it was, shaking, and not knowing what I'm supposed to do with this, because it was the first kind of what I would call a premonition that I had, and I really didn't know what to do with it. So I did pick up the phone. I did call our local police. There was a part of me that was a little afraid to call them and say, hey, look, I'm clairvoyant and I'm getting this information, and I even have a street address, but something just did it, right? There's no doer here. It just happened. And the man on the phone was actually really calm and not at all judgmental about it. And he said, well, let me take the details, which he did. And I could tell kind of a hesitation in his voice. And he said, can I get your phone number and your name so that we can call you if we need to? And that's standard procedure. And I said, sure. And I said, look, this may sound crazy, and I don't know why I feel like I'm supposed to call you, but I just am. And he said, no, it doesn't sound crazy at all. In fact, we just had a call at that address. So he said, we may be in touch. And I never did hear from them again on that particular case, but I have called several times since then with other things that have come through in our community where we've had loss. And they never seem to balk at anything that I share with them. So again, these are all just stories. They're fun, I know, to people who aren't having these experiences, and I know that's why people ask about them. I've had people ask if I communicate with the fairy realm and things like that, so I'll share a true story about one of my experiences. A client called me and said that her elderly parents who were still living at home were having something strange happen in the house, and she asked if I would go over, and I said sure. So I did, and instantly was shown that there was a whole kind of a nature element that was happening in their house, and it would happen when they would go to bed. Well, the woman was senile and the man wasn't. And as I'm walking through the house kind of trying to understand what happened, the husband's showing me around, and he takes me in the bedroom, and he said, this is why we wanted you to come. And he shows me this lamp, and he tells me how the one night before they came again, they being this nature element, came into the house, and he sat up, and there were no lights on in the bedroom or anything. He sat up looking out the bedroom window down into their hallway, and he yelled, you need to leave. And when he did that, this kind of light ball went through the bedroom and hit the lamp. And he showed me the burn. And the burn was on the outside of the lamp. It wasn't on the inside of the lamp. And it looked like something had flown at it. It was the only way I can describe it. Anyway, I continued to walk through the house and went around to the back of the house, and there was this beautiful little pond with a waterfall there. And I asked him about that. I was drawn to that, and he said, yeah, my wife, who's now quite senile, really wanted to be able to sit by water, so I built this for her a couple years ago. And you could see where the ground had been dug up, and he had put stone around it and everything, but it never quite got fully finished. And I said, this is where they're coming from. When you disturbed the land, they were basically invited into the house. And he said, well, don't they have to be invited? And I said, typically, yes, they do. So then we went into the living room where his senile wife was, and I was offered tea, and he got up to make tea, and I was sitting with her and chatting, and she looked so beautiful. She had gotten all dressed up for me that day. And as he left the room, she looks over at me and she winks and she says, he thinks I don't see them, but I do. I tell him I don't see them. And I said, oh, really? And she said, yes. And I said, are you telling them they can stay? And she goes, yes, because I'm going to go soon and I want him to have company. It was probably about 6 months later that I got news that she had transitioned, and not long after that he did. But, you know, these are the beautiful stories that happen in this experience, and they're fun. Again, they're fun, they're magical, they're whimsical, they're mystical. There's no explanation for them, and there doesn't need to be. And it's certainly not all that this experience of Kelly is about. So I share, for those of you who wanted to kind of hear some fun stories, and also for those of you who are so fascinated with this, what this is like living with this. This is very real for me. This is very real for me in this illusion of life. I say very real for me because I say it's part of my experience right now, and this could go at any time, and that would be okay. So I will leave you guys with those little fun snippet stories, and continue to keep the comments and questions coming. I really, really appreciate them. Some of you have written to me and said, you know, you really enjoy the videos, so I'll continue to do them, and that feedback is appreciated. Don't ever think that you should stop doing that, because when I stop hearing that, I know it's time for this to end. The sharings will stop, and it'll just happen. So with love, I send this off, and hope that you're all having an amazing day. The sun is out here in Seattle, a rarity for us, and I'm just looking out and just feeling so blessed. Much love, much gratitude, much positive energy coming your way. Until next time, in love.